Hey there yogis, welcome to Real Yoga. My name is Hanna and today we're doing a how to do tutorial for Wild Thing. Now I've said it before and I will say it again, I think Wild Thing is the sexiest pose in all of yoga. It's really open and free and you feel very liberated when you're in it, but it can also be a little bit of a fear-based pose because we're sort of stepping back into unknown territory, plus we're upside down, plus our arms and legs are all over the place. So let's break it down step by step. I do recommend doing this tutorial after you've already warmed up because it's quite a large back bend. So if you haven't done that, then go ahead. Otherwise, when you're ready, grab your stretchy pants and I'll meet you on the mat. Alright, so one of the biggest things about Wild Thing is that our shoulder can go a little out of control. So let me show you what I mean by that. So when our hand is on the floor and we're really trying to rotate our chest up to the sky, let's see if you can see what my crazy shoulder will do. So your hand is gripped into the floor, that part of you is not moving, and then you open. Ooh, my shoulder even just cracked then, right? It's just going all the way out and doing some crazy stuff. And we're just losing some stability in this part of our body that is essentially holding a lot of our body weight. So before we get into Wild Thing, I want to work on some shoulder integration techniques we can use to keep this shoulder stable and strong and instead find the lift up with the chest and opening all these muscles in between the rib cage and finding lots of space in our six-pack abs, etc. Okay, so come onto all fours to begin with. And find this really wide base with your hands. So spread your fingers really wide here. And then with your fingers spread wide, start to grip your fingerprints into the mat. And you might even notice that there's a little puff of air between the yoga mat and the palm of your hand. And I like to think of this as one of those Garfield 90s car decorations that, you know, Garfield used to like suction onto the SUV. So let's call these our Garfield hands for the purposes of this tutorial. So find your Garfield suction hands, right? And now we're going to plug the arm bone into the socket. And to do that, we're going to let the chest drop and squeeze our shoulder blades together actively. So we're not just kind of letting the belly hang out here. Draw the belly in and instead squeeze your shoulder blades together. And you might see that my arm bone moves a little bit more steadily into the shoulder socket. Okay, keep that. And now 50% we're going to take it in the opposite direction. So keep your shoulder blades squeezing together, but now lift your chest a little and feel, you might even feel that your shoulder blades, so these kind of wing-shaped bones, are sticking to your rib cage. And that's what we want to do here. Final thing is to, without moving your arms or your hands in any way, squeeze your forearms towards one another. Ooh. So you should feel here that your arms are steady, your shoulders are really integrated, and this is what we want to achieve when we're starting to come into Wild Thing, our big old back bend. All right, so let's test that out in our quote-unquote easiest version of the pose. So come to sit on your booty. I'm going to do the right arm, so on the right side. So bend your left knee, and for this first one we can take the left foot a little out to the left so there's a bit more space between your legs. That's totally fine. And now take your right hand behind you. Straight away find this Garfield hand, right? So grip into your fingerprints, find this little pocket of space between the mat and the palm of your hand. Beautiful. And now squeeze your shoulder blades together. Start to activate the muscles in between your shoulder blades. Keep that. And now start to pull your chest back in space until you feel that shoulder blade glued down onto the back of your rib cage. And if you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, it's okay if all of this is a bit too much to begin with. Really focus on gripping your fingers into the floor, activating your forearm, and really feeling like your shoulder is going to stay kind of stuck. Your shoulder blade is going to stay stuck on the back of your ribs. All right. Here, I like to take a power fist. It just makes me feel like I'm coming into some sort of 80s awesome dance move. So find a power fist with your left hand. Take an inhale to set up. Exhale, grip those fingers into the floor, and on your next inhale, press into both feet as you lift your hips up. You can lift your left arm to the sky. Now, notice if this right shoulder comes forward, can you squeeze that shoulder blade onto the back of your ribs? And if you like, you can take the left hand back behind you. Beautiful, looking amazing. One more inhale breath. And as you exhale very slowly, with control, start to lower your hips back down to the floor. Nice. All right, you can shake off your right arm. Cool. So this is option one, and hopefully that helped you feel kind of the power you need in the grounded arm to lift up. And to be honest, I know I said that was the easy version, but I find that version kind of hard because your arm does a lot of the work to find this lift. Whereas coming into Wild Thing from Downward Dog, our arms are already working, we're sort of used to it, and instead we're going to flip over. So that's the next version we're going to do. And what I've found, at least in my practice, especially in the early days, is when the teacher says to flip your top leg behind you, I used to get really kind of afraid that my foot would never find the floor and I would kind of crumple into a wild mess rather than a wild thing. So the version I'm going to show you now is to take the hips down so that there's less kind of space between your floating foot and the floor. And I'll show you what I mean. So you're welcome to either watch first and then pause, rewind, and do with me, or you can come on the journey with me into Wild Thing with a hip dip. All right, so let's come into Downward Facing Dog. So first of all, spread your fingers really wide, find your Garfield hands as you grip your fingerprints into the floor, particularly that space between your first finger and thumb. Feel as though you want to pinch that space in your mat. Tuck your toes underneath you, lift your hips, and come into your Downward Facing Dog. All right. Already here, start to squeeze your shoulder blades together and then lift the back of your heart up just a little so you feel already that these shoulder blades are stuck down onto the floor. All right, and this time I'm going to come onto my, I'm going to balance on my left hand, so I'm going to lift the right leg up. All right, so when you're ready, inhale, right leg lifts. Exhale, bend the knee like you want to kick your own butt. And now use your inner thigh muscles to lift that knee up in space as you start to rotate your chest towards the right side. Straight away, notice if this left shoulder wants to come with you. See if you can keep that shoulder blade stuck onto the back of your rib cage. All right, take another inhale, lift your knee even higher. And as you exhale now, pivot on the outer edge of your left foot. Start to lift up onto your right fingertips. And now drop your hips down as that right arm comes away from the floor. So my hips are down. And then tap the right toes behind you. And here we are. That wasn't so far down to the floor, right? Keep the shoulder really active, really stable. And then lift your hips up. Start to straighten through the right leg. As you reach your right hand behind you, you might even grab the back of your skull for this very sexy version of Wild Thing. Keep rotating your chest, but keeping the shoulder glued to the back of your ribs. One more breath in here. And then to come out, start to dip your hips back down to the floor. Take your right hand down and back into Downward Facing Dog. All right, drop the knees and phew. Here we are. Okay, so if you did that along with me, I hope that made some sense. Sometimes I had to figure out what's going on while you're upside down. So this is another version of how they drop back into Wild Thing that I find somewhat less scary. And we can really use the power of the legs then to push up into this big old backbending shape. Okay, another version of how to get into Wild Thing, another semi-challenging version, they're all pretty challenging to be honest, is to come from side plank pose or Vashisthasana. So again, I'm going to take my right hand to the floor. We're not getting into side plank in any kind of wonderful way here. And straight away, I'm going to find this grip into my fingerprints, this little puff of air between the palm of my hand and the floor, and then roll my shoulders together to find this muscle in between the shoulder blades activate, and then take that off about 50% and feel instead that my shoulder blades are really plugged into the back of my body. All right, so my right shoulder is feeling really strong. I'm going to take my left leg out to the side with the toes pointing forward, and then lift up and bring my right foot there as well. All right, so here's our side plank posture already. Lift your hips, and then to come into wild thing from here, keep pushing your hand into the floor. You can lift your left knee up to the sky. First come into maybe a fallen tree pose, and then from here, tap the left toes behind you. Start to rotate your chest up. Keep the shoulder plugged in. Keep rotating the chest just as much as feels good for you as you lift your hips up. And again, you can do any kind of sexy thing with your head, your hand, whatever you got going on. Take one more breath in here. And then to come out, drop the left hand down, and we can meet together in plank pose or whatever floats your boat. Whew. I thought, I'm just going to be demoing, right? So I can have my hair down. Makes sense. Wild thing, wild hair, right? Okay, so we've gone through 3 different versions of wild thing pose now and how to get into it. And we'll finish with the kind of craziest, most open, most scary but fun to achieve or overcome fear ways of getting into wild thing, right? Which is from downward dog without the hip dip in between. So taking the leg up and then sending it way back behind you. So all the same stuff. We're integrating the shoulder, we're finding space in the ribs, lifting the chest, and just enjoying this crazy, big, wild pose. So if you're with me, come back into downward facing dog. Again, I'm going to be doing the left hand down, right leg up this time. So find your downward facing dog, and again, find these grippy hands, your Garfield hands, and already here, rotate your shoulders away from your ears and squeeze them in towards the midline. Keep that, and now lift the back of your heart up just a fraction, so your shoulders feel super plugged in. My arms feel really stable, and hopefully you're getting that same vibe there too. All right. When you're ready, inhale, send the right leg straight up and back. Exhale, bend the knee once again like you're going to kick your own butt. All right, this time, really find that stability in the left fingers, the left arm. As you rotate on the outer edge of the left foot, lifting the right fingertips away from the floor, tapping the right toes behind you as you lift up through your hips. Throw your head back dramatically. You can catch the back of your skull in your hand. Keep squeezing your shoulders in towards the midline, super engaged, really stable. Do you feel very sexy here? One more inhale. And then to come out, start to bring the right hand down to the floor, right leg up to the sky, back into your 3-legged dog. And then from here, you can come back to down dog. I'm simply going to come into a seat. Phew, phew, phew. Hair everywhere. It's getting wild up in here. Alright, so I hope that tutorial helped to explain what is actually really important for wild thing, which is not necessarily to have the bendiest spine in the world, but to protect the major joints of the body so that we can keep practicing yoga and be wild and sexy well into our twilight years. No? That's why I practice yoga. All right, everyone. Take your hands together at your heart. Take a deep breath in through your nose. And as you exhale, we say namaste.